change the blades on our chipper. So you're gonna have to change the blades. Depends how often you need to change the blades. You need to change the blades. So some of the more common questions you get about wood chippers is how often do you need to change the blades? And it's a very similar question to how often do you change the chain on your chainsaw. It really depends on what you're chipping, how often you're chipping, how hard you're making it work, and how you treat your wood chipper. So we treat this one pretty well. It's a Moorbark Beaver M15 RX. It's a very good chipper actually for a 15 inch. It's chews pretty well, it throws pretty well, as in throws the chips very well out the chute. It runs very well. It seems very strong mechanically and structurally, so we don't have any problems with it really at all. The filter is that type, which is not the easiest to get off, but we manage. And we don't really have any problems with this chipper. However, we do need to change the blades on it. So who can change the blades? Who can change the blades is anyone who is competent. So who is competent? So if you read the manuals for these things, they will say a specialist needs to change the blades. But if you get a specialist to change blades, you're going to be at the shop all the time. You're going to have a chipper down all the time, when the guys on your crew can change the blades very easily on site. They can do it in a matter of really good setup with everything working smoothly, probably in about 20 minutes for a really quick job, a little bit longer for other jobs. Today we're going to do it a lot longer because we're going to do it slow, and I'll be showing Quentin how to do it thoroughly, and we'll be filming quite a bit and just taking it slow. So we've got jobs to do today. We've got to go out and do some work, so we're just going to do this in the morning. It's not something you need to prepare a whole weekend for to get the job done. You just do it in the morning. Like I said, if you really push it, you got the right tools, 20 minutes, done. All of these larger chippers will have what we call a dead man. This is an electronic switch where basically if it's pulled out like this, then the chipper won't start. So if you go around and turn the key on, nothing happens. So that's part of the investigation. If your chipper's not starting, then it could be one of these dead man switches. It's called a dead man switch. Well, that's what I call them. So when your chipper's not starting at all, it's probably an electronic issue. Could be a e-stop, could be a dead man switch. And you'd go around, you'd pull the e-stops out, you'd check all the e-stops. Then you'd come up to this, and what you could do is these contact points inside here and here, you could put some, what can you put on there? Something cleaning agent, some contact cleaner, spray it on there, and then just wiggle it and get it moving in there. It could be just rattled loose. It's a notorious issue for wood chippers, is just vibrating these loose. So you can come and check these and make sure they're connected properly. If it's a problem, then you can get it going with a bit of contact cleaner, or to be honest, out in the bush, just a bit of spit works fine. And then stick it in and you're off to the races. So if that's a problem, get it fixed, because it's only going to get worse. So that means that you cannot open this hood unless this is unplugged. So as soon as this is unplugged, we can't start the machine, which is good. Another good thing when you're doing maintenance on a chipper, no matter who you are, no matter what you're doing, no matter what your crew's like, take the key out and put it in your own pocket. Why? Because I've been inside one of these chippers before, and I've heard a workmate of mine, well, a work colleague of mine, go up and try and turn the chipper on. So I'm going to put that key in my pocket. It's safe in there. Oh, geez. Oh, they're quite bad. So this means that we've been putting some rocks through here. You can see these gauges, these gouges. I'll bring them in a bit closer. these gouges are pretty bad. That's really bad. That's an indication that this means stones have been going through here, okay? As a rule, we don't put stones through the wood chipper. Okay, these gouges mean stones have been going through. They're quite big as well. If you see this in your wood chipper, you need to have a word with your crew about what's going through the chipper. So not raking up any gravel roads, any rocks, not putting any foreign material through. Like, this is probably some of the worst condition blades you can get. If they're anything worse than this, then you really need to have a thorough retraining of your crew, which we need to have a chat with everyone about this, because I'm also feeding it, not pointing fingers, and these guys are pretty green, so we're gonna have to be very much more careful about what goes through the wood chipper. This is really bad. All that should be happening is they should be a bit dull like this over here, okay, not these big gouges here. So we just need to be a bit more careful, and instead of raking up and putting it in the back of the chipper, we're going to rake up and throw in the back of the truck. Okay, so let's get started with removing these blades. Okay, first we need to lock the drum or the disc. There's usually a pin somewhere, and there's usually somewhere to put the pin, which goes in here, and it locks in there. So it means blade can't spin. Okay, tools we're going to need to do this blade change. You need a torque wrench. Nice new torque wrench here. We need this to torque up all of the bolts and get them to the correct torque. Surprisingly, they're not as tight as what you'd think. Do not use a big crank bar and over tighten them. They can stretch the bolts, they can fray the bolts, they can cause the blades to blow off. And this steel housing, I've seen this steel housing just peeled open like a banana peel when blades fly off, so it's not good. So never over tighten them, don't use a rattle gun, use a torque wrench. We'll check the manual in a moment to see exactly what torque we need to do them up at. We need a rattle gun, okay? Not to do them up, to undo them. This is copperies. You don't need this, but some people like to use it. It makes them easier to come out. Yeah. We need blades. This is a box for the old blades, and in here we've got some new blades. So the new blades, meaning they've been to the joint to get sharpened and they've been sent back to us. So they're sharp on both sides. The blades in here, I'm pretty sure they're blunt on the other side, so we're just a full replacement. And when you fully replace your blades, you fully replace the bolts. Keep the washers, keep the whatever else you need, but the bolts get replaced. These bolts, over time, are under such stress that they can stretch or fracture. I've seen them stretched, they get narrow in the middle here. It's not a good sign. So bolts are, relative to the liability and the incident that can happen if they fail, they're relatively cheap. Okay, if you don't change these and blades fly off and kill someone, damage your machine, might be a $100,000 machine, who knows? Might be killing someone, which is really bad. So changing the bolts is relatively cheap when you compare it to those things. So every time you change the blades for new blades, change the bolts, brand new bolts. Okay. If you're just rotating the blades to the other side, same bolts. You'll need some kind of scraper tool. This is just like a, what is it, like a paint scraper? Something like that, just to scrape some of the muck away, which I'll show you all the muck that's in there. Be very careful not to drop these down there. Is that air compressor reach out here? Alright. Lastly, you need an air compressor. You don't really, but it's handy. this is the muck that you've got to scrape off, because if this builds up into too much, when you put the blades on, this will be underneath them and you won't get a good seal on your, see all that? You won't get a good seal on your blades. So you need to scrape this off. You can use a steel brush or this, but you need to do it every time. There's quite a bit on here. See, look at that. Let's scrape all that off. Get right into the corners. Clean out the corners. So the other blade just slides on nicely. Put your safety squints on.
No need for a torque wrench?
Not to undo them. No good. Get the new blades, nice and clean. We don't need to clean these at all. Extremely sharp and extremely heavy. If these touch your skin, you're gonna cut yourself. Every tree worker who's done this has cut themselves. It goes deep. So line these up where you want them, and then get the old washer essentially. I've given it a scrape underneath, and we'll give each of these bolts a bit of a dip in this. This is Copperies by Penrite. Okay, we'll just give them a little dip in that before we put them in. You must start these by hand. If you start these with a rattle gun or an impact driver and it's cross-threaded, you've just ruined your threads. Okay, so these are all done up hand tight, just to save myself a bit of time. I'm not going to do them up like this, I'm just going to spin them a bit. So we might even do these up just a little bit more, because in the holes underneath there's a bit of muck in there that I didn't get out, which I can see. I can do these up a bit more. Alright, so to get the torque setting for these chipper blades, you need the operator's manual. We don't have the operator's manual. So rather than just do the old push click, make a noise, we've got this. Maintenance made easy. So we just put this code into the phone, and we got this long video which tells you how to put a helmet on, and you should put gloves on when doing this, which is absurd. All I want is a number. All I want is a number of how much to torque these bolts up to. And most operators' manuals will have that. You'll go to the setting and they'll say, torque them up to this setting. So what we did is we found this long video, and we had to screenshot it to find this absurdly hard to read table, which took us a while to figure out that we have grade 8 coarse 3/4 bolts, and we need to set them to 280 pounds per foot for oiled bolts. So we've adjusted this torque wrench to 280, and we're just going to crank them up now.
So what are some of the, what's the word we've been using? Cowboy way of doing this.
Use a crank bar and you just do them up as tight as you can. I'll be honest, when I first started in trees, I didn't know any better. I was about 19 or 20. And we used to use a crank bar and tighten them up. And we found one day that the bolts were stretched and they could blow off very easily.
Yeah, wow.
So if you over tighten them, it can damage the bolts.
Yeah.
If you don't replace the bolts, they can get damaged over time. So you've got to use a torque wrench that clicks like that when you put it at the right setting. I had a chipper once suck a 10mm steel cable with a yellow hook through it, an 18-inch disc chipper, and I've seen these blades fly off, and this metal here is just peeled off, just peeled open all over the machine. Lucky no one was killed. So you don't want these flying off. You want to make sure they're spot on every time. That's why we must use a torque wrench and we must change the bolts. So we're done. The next thing to check is, now we've got these blades on, these blades might be longer or shorter than the previous ones. I didn't even check it because we're going to check the anvil anyway. So when we take this lock out, put it back at home, we now can go down here and check the anvil. It's probably a bit hard for you to see in here. Oh, that's a big gap actually. That's too big. That's a huge gap. These blades are a lot smaller. All right, so we're gonna have to change those. All right, so we've just changed the blades. Every time you change the blades, you need to check the anvil. The distance between the anvil and the blade needs to be whatever the operator's manual says, but usually around about 3.5 mil or something like that. So it needs to be bloody close. And that's not bloody close because those blades are a little bit smaller than the blades we took off. So now we'll go ahead and we'll change the anvil. Now, we might even just cut to another video of doing this. So we're gonna watch that video now. So, we've got a light in here. Probably do this in. This is why you need to clean out your, this here could bounce up here, and I'll show you what could happen. Careful not to cut your fingers off doing this. So you could be driving and this would sit here like this. Okay, so this one little stick can burn out your whole clutch. So you really want to put a sweeping branch through to clear all this out. And you don't want anything sitting in there. Okay, so let's have a look at this. Okay, oh Jesus. So this is the anvil running along here. It's a bit of steel. You can see it kind of drops in on an angle underneath the deck. It's a little bit rounded off, but it's not bad enough to change at the moment. And you can see this is the blade that goes down and slices past the anvil. So the actual blade is a little bit off center. Let's look at the other one. The other one's coming down over here. All right, so what we might do is we might adjust the anvil so it's a little bit closer and it starts chipping a little bit better. I'd say that's about 4 mil, 5 mil. We might take it into about 3, just over 3 mil. Okay.
Yep, it is now.